Geeks and geekettes and comic book fans the world over, welcome once again to Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, an esteemed comic book writer of world renown, about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. And I urge you, please, if you have not subscribed already, please subscribe. Literally, thousands of you in recent months have subscribed to this channel, and it has changed the face of the whole deal. The possibilities are endless now as we creep toward 9,000 subscribers. It really has increased the viewership, the reach of this little endeavor of mine, actually endeavor of ours, because you asked the questions and I provide the answers. So we're kind of working together here. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. If you have subscribed in the past, thank you so very much from all of us. Hector Gutierrez, have you ever written a script for a video game before or know anyone who has? If so, what's the whole process? I worked on a few video games here and there. I worked on a video game for The Expendables. Mr. Stallone got me the job, and it paid pretty good. Now, I didn't write the scenario for the game. My job was to come in and write dialogue for all the characters. And if you've ever seen a dialogue script for a video game, it's like this endless array of exchanges and things the characters have to say. And it's kind of a challenge because generally it's a million different variations of there they are and let's get out of here. So you kind of come up with like hundreds and hundreds of different ways to say those things. So I wrote a bunch of exchanges for all the characters, and the original cast of the movie was the one who read them. And Sly assured me that at the recording session, they were laughing at a lot of my dialogue. Hopefully the parts that I meant to be funny. But it's kind of tedious work, and it really challenges the question that every writer always asks themselves all day long: how do I say this better? But interesting work. And I did similar stuff on a Batman game that actually they stopped making in the middle. I had to write a lot of it's the same deal. It was just like endless. This is basically what we want the characters. This is the character, the Joker, and we basically want him to say something like this, but you come up with a better way of saying it. And so I had to write like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of dialogue for Batman, Joker, Riddler, Robin, Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, and the rest. And again, the same as with the Expendables game. It was tedious yet challenging, and it paid well. Video games pay very well. I've actually worked, I can't remember the name of the company. I can't even remember the name of the game because it was such an unpleasant experience. I worked on the development of a mobile game. And you'd be astonished how much work goes into the development of a mobile game. And even though the game in its beta version had millions of subscribers in, I believe, Taiwan and the Netherlands where they tried it out, the game company based in Japan decided to close their American unit and just abandon the game entirely, which is probably for the best because it was one of the most tedious games I've ever seen in my life. The people producing it, gaming people are different than comic book people. They don't seem to like really crazy ideas. And they don't seem to like improving the product. They're kind of like B-movie producers. It's all about conservation of risk and keeping things simple and keeping things very, very, very conventional. It's rather stifling. But the pay was great. They were paying $50 an hour for the writing. And they were even paying us $50 an hour to play the game. And even at $50 an hour to play the stupid mobile game, to basically play it and make improvements and suggestions and all the rest of it, I couldn't stand to play it for very long because it was just so freaking boring, like so many mobile games are. But yeah, that's my gaming experience. I'd love to write the scenario for a game. just to say I had done it. But, I'm happier doing comics, quite frankly. Coffee drinking man. I'm sure you've read the news about Fables going into public domain. I know Bill Willingham is a creator owner of Fables, but I was curious on your thoughts of this move. He said he had tried to get modern day DC to abide by their contracts, but they wouldn't. In fact, and I didn't know this, it seems the Fables game based on his IP wasn't exactly something he was asked about. Basically, he didn't have money to sue DC, so just put his creation into public domain. What are your thoughts on this? I don't know a whole lot. I know what I've read, but I'd like to see an extensive interview with Bill to learn more of the ins and outs of this. But generally, I'll tell you that dealing with DC post Paul Levitz it's a nightmare, and suing them, is insane because I've had my own experience with this. DC has lawyers whose job is to run the clock out on you, to waste as much of your money and time as they can. And lawyers are expensive. And when you can hire a lawyer to basically write a letter, and it's going to cost you money, like hundreds, to get a letter written, if you have a decent entertainment lawyer. And then DC will simply respond by saying they didn't understand anything in the letter. And so another letter has to be written. This is what they do. And they'll do this over and over and over again. They'll change the subject. They'll say they didn't understand. They'll say this wasn't clear. They'll give a response that clearly isn't a direct response to what the letter was asking. And all of this is to get you to spin your wheels and waste time, because DC's got lawyers on retainers. They've got lawyers hanging on hooks, waiting to go after you. And all they got to do is pull one down and set him loose. So it's pointless unless you can get a contingency lawyer, which I ended up doing. That's a lawyer who will take a piece of the settlement rather than being paid up front. And once you do that, DC sort of goes, well, let's make a deal. Well, is this enough? Is this enough? How about this? How about this and that? Because they know you're in it for the long haul. But in a case like this, there's no real money. It's about control of the property, and so there's no real cash settlement. So there's no contingency for a lawyer to take up. So I understand that Bill doesn't want to waste all of this money. Putting in the public domain is an interesting idea. I think it's a testament to how pissed off he was, and I sure can share those feelings. So yeah, I mean, I like what he did, and he is right. They do not abide by contracts, and even in a creator-controlled thing, they'll simply do whatever they want with it, and you're free to sue them if you want. I mean, Alan Moore, of course, didn't approve of any of the things they did with Watchmen, but his contract didn't give him any final say, any kind of control. The other dastardly thing about creator-owned contracts with DC is, and as I've said in the past, all creator-owned contracts are based on the creator-owned contract written by Dean Mullaney for Eclipse. And one of the, great codicils in that contract, and every creator contract I've seen since, is at the 5-year mark. If nothing has been done with the property, all rights revert to the creator owner. And unfortunately for Alan Moore, Bill Willingham, and many others, DC simply, they'll put out something within those 5 years to keep the contract going. There's never been a time where Watchmen wasn't in publication, because that would allow the contract to lapse. So I'm sure the same thing happened with Fables, where they did just enough with the property to keep the contract alive, so Bill couldn't take the property back and do what he wanted. So, I mean, I'm sure it became painfully obvious to him he was never going to get ownership of Fables back. And so he put it in the public domain. Now what that means and how he did that, I don't know how that works. but I'm curious about it. And maybe there's already an extensive interview with him, or maybe he's done a podcast or something, but I'll have to look that up and follow it. But I have felt his pain. Oh. Joshua Ignatowski, if I recall correctly, you said that after writing your first couple of Batman comics for DC, you felt as though you had no more Batman stories left inside you to tell. How did you overcome this and come up with so many more stories for the character afterwards? Well, I mean, I just kind of, backed away from it. I'm not one of these guys who'll just take an assignment like, oh, that's a hot assignment that'll pay a lot, and just jump in. I'm always like, okay, yeah, that'd be cool, but do I have anything to contribute? Am I the best guy for the job here? Even on something like Batman. And, working on Batman it's intimidating. It's the most, Batman and Superman are the most famous superhero characters in the world. They are synonymous with superhero. They are synonymous with American comics. And take an iconic, legendary figure like that, and they stick you in the driver's seat. It's a little intimidating. And so, I wasn't one of these guys who was going to come in, as I've seen so many times. I wasn't one of these writers who come in and say, this is what I would do, and here's how I'm going to reinvent the character, and, here I'm going to explore the depths. I can't tell you how many lunches I went to with Denny at conventions and otherwise with prospective writers who sat there and lectured Denny on who Batman was and what should motivate him and everything else, as if they were going to, rewrite Batman history, and they're doing this in front of freaking Denny O'Neil. It's like, I would never have the hubris. I would never even have the desire or interest or inclination to lecture Denny. When I worked for Denny and with Denny on the Batman projects, I always bowed to him as he was the sensei. We called him the sensei. He was the master. He was the Batman. And you turned to him when you had questions and everything else. You were writing his image, his version of Batman, and the guidelines were there and everything else. And what was wrong with that? It's the Batman that I knew from adolescence on was Denny's version. He's the guy who brought the character back from, camp. And by that, I mean campiness, the sort of outrageous parody aspects that the Batman 66 show had placed on the character. And so, why would you do that? And so that was, all kind of intimidating. I'm writing Batman for Denny O'Neil. And it's sort of a double whammy. And I was flummoxed for a little while till I started thinking of stories. Because I like to think of stories suited to the characters and then put the characters in them. I didn't want to write about Batman. I wanted to write interesting stories that had Batman in them. To try to, hoe some fresh ground here, come up with some different angles. And then once I sort of found my way, and in early stories, I created my own villains or resurrected like B-level villains because I didn't want to dive right into the classics. And as I became more comfortable with the franchise and it became, I understood more about it because, writing something and reading something totally different. So as I gained what I felt was a more natural feel for the character, then I started, wanting to write the Joker, the Riddler, Catwoman, include the classic characters in as well as the classic elements. So there you go. It's just a little bit of, intimidation, not writer's block, but just intimidation. Another one from Joshua Ignatowski. Which Batman utility belt style do you prefer? Pouches or capsules? Well, I'm all about classic Batman, but I gotta go for the pouch thing because it seems more utilitarian. It seems more like what a guy would use. The capsule thing seems kind of, I don't know, OCD, because you've got these compartments and capsules and stuff, and very specific things have to fit in them. It doesn't seem very manly. It doesn't seem like I'm just going to jam a bunch of stuff in these pouches and go. It's like, oh, I see I'm almost out of shark repellent, or I'm almost out of this antidote to this rare venom. I need to refill, or this item has expired. It just seems a little nutty to me. Pouches seem to be more, as I said, utilitarian. Stuff them with what you need, what you think you'll need for that mission, and go. Green Adrenaline 6405 by Crom. Out of curiosity, what's your favorite Conan story ever written? Also, what was your favorite Conan story to work on while under the guidance of Larry Hama with Marvel? And do you have a particular favorite Conan comic book you read while growing up? Yeah, Conan, man. I mean, I just dug Conan from the age of, I think 13 or 14 is when I ran across my first Lancer paperback of Conan the Barbarian. Just fell in love with everything about the character. Of course I did. I'm at an age with raging hormones. But my favorite story, and one of the earlier ones I read, but it's still my favorite, is Jewels of Gwalior. And mainly because it comes to such a tremendous climax. This unforgettable scene of Conan on a stone bridge over a subterranean river fighting with this ape creature. And he has to decide whether he's going to save the girl or the gold. It's moral conundrum for Conan that adds to the suspense of the action scene. And everything about that, the ending of that story is just fascinates me. And when I'm writing Conan, I think about that climax and try to get somewhere near to it, as far as the visuals, the sense of wonder, and the level of suspense. One of my favorites to work on when I was working with Larry Hama, and this might have been post Larry Hama. Craig Anderson might have actually been the editor here. Was this issue of Savage Sword of Conan. Gary suggested it. It was a team of these, female Amazon warriors called the Iron Damsels. And Gary had drawn it in a story with a writer previous to me, and he always wanted to bring the characters back. And this is one of our last issues, might even be the last issue of Conan that we did together. And Gary encouraged me to pull out all the stops. And if you've ever seen this issue, it's just freaking amazing. There's a chase down a Whitewater Rapids, and Gary just draws the hell out of it. I mean, he must have spent. There's a couple of pages in that story that he must have spent 3 or 4 days on. There's no way he penciled and inked that page in one day. But I urge you to check it out. I always liked working on stories that Gary would suggest, because I knew, this is what he wants to draw. And it just delighted me to come up with all these crazy images and wild action set pieces for him to work on. Now, as far as, I was a Savage Sword man from the beginning. So all my favorite Conan stories appeared in Savage Sword. And I particularly remember this Iron Shadows of the Moon. It's early on in the Savage Sword run, and it's where John Buscema and Alfredo Alcala, who for a long time was his most frequent inker on this title, it's where they really start to gel. They really start to gel as a team, and just some super impressive. I can see the pages in my head from the story. I really dug this issue. Okay, from Nick, why do you loathe The Killing Joke? I just, it's beautifully drawn. It's compellingly told. It's well written. And everything else. I just wish it wasn't a Batman story. No, Alan Moore says, and I believe him, that he never meant it to be canon. He just meant it as, let's take Batman and just tell the wildest story we can imagine. And, okay. But the way it became canon and the way they moved it into Batman continuity, I hate it. If you can believe what Moore says, he doesn't like that either, because as dark and dismal and bleak as Moore's stories can be, he still likes he still has a childlike fascination for, standard normal superhero stories, the adventure aspect, the escapist fiction aspect of it. So, I mean, Tom Strong is certainly proof of that. But I don't like anything about this story. It's misery porn. I don't like seeing these beloved characters put in, really disturbing situations with, a lot of perversity going on in this, fetishism going on in this story. And I don't like it. I don't like how it altered the Joker character for so many writers, that they wanted to write this Joker as opposed to the Joker who existed before. And I really hate the ending. Where Joker tells Batman a joke and they share a laugh together before Batman, cuffs him and leads him away. If I could tolerate that ending, if after recovering from laughing at a joke that really isn't that funny anyway, after recovering from laughing, Batman beat the living hell out of the Joker. I mean, Joker wakes up in a hospital with all 4 limbs in traction and, a fractured skull. I would have been, still wouldn't have liked the story, but I would have been better with it. So, yeah, there's nothing about it I like. And yeah, people who do like it, I can see why you would, but you should be ashamed of yourself. Okay, Christopher R. Taylor. One of the more popular story types out now is the police procedural, whether CSI forensics or just cops and robbers. How would you go about writing a superhero procedural instead of the usual story and actual, here's what it would be like day to day as a superhero doing their job sort of story or series? Well, I mean, when I was on Batman, I wrote a number of police procedurals. I mean, I was working on detective comics, so I wanted to lean into that aspect of Batman. So we had whodunit mysteries, we had police procedural, we had dog and cat stories, dog and cat crime stories like Silence of the Lambs or Dirty Harry, where the hero is up against a particularly wily adversary and so has to, make a lot of chess moves in order to catch up with them. And I really leaned into the police procedural aspect. I mean, I had the cop characters appearing quite regularly. Most of the stuff I did in my detective run was, street level crime, actually catching robbers and, killers, hitmen, fraudsters, all kinds of stuff like that. So, that was a big thing for me is, I know police procedurals are the thing, like especially on network television and the streaming services, to the point where I find this hard to believe, but then I realize, yeah, it's probably true. When they were shopping Walking Dead around and they presented it to NBC the NBC executives, the execs said, well, could they solve murder mysteries? Yes. In a zombie apocalypse, they're going to be consumed with solving murder mysteries. So yeah, but it should be more standard fare with crime characters, street level superhero types like Batman or Moon Knight or something like that, non-powered heroes. But then again, Superman was good at solving mysteries too, but they were usually of the very, very weird kind. Now, as far as day in the life stories go, a lot of newbie writers write a day in a life story because they think that, fans like them. Fans do like them. And they'll write day in a life story and editors will reject them. Marvel banned them. For a long time at Marvel, you were not allowed to write a day in a life story. They didn't want to see that because everybody was trying to do it. But the thing is, if you do a day in a life story, it's got to be more than just, Peter Parker woke up in the morning, had breakfast, and, fought Dr. Octopus, and then went to bed. You've got to have more of a hook. One of the rare times I wrote a day in a life story was Detective Comics 711, but our hook was that Batman would not appear in the story, that the story would be completely centered around Bruce Wayne and an evening out with one of his dates. And, and the challenge here was how to get mystery, suspense, and action into a story with Bruce Wayne. And, so Graham and I kind of put our heads together and figured out, what to do with this story. But it's very much a day in the life. It's an average day for Bruce Wayne and how eventful and all the rest of it. But like I said, it has a twist that it's all Bruce Wayne all the time, which was unusual for a Batman story, to have to do a Batman story in which Batman does not appear outside of this absolutely freaking amazing cover, one of my favorite Batman covers of all time, and certainly the best cover in a long run of awesome covers that Graham Nolan did for this title. Bill Robertson, I just discovered your book, Law Dog. It's awesome. It was a book I would skip over while digging through back issue bins over the years. Listening to Ask Chuck Dixon got me to pay better attention to your projects, however, and shame on me for overlooking this cool book. Was the comic inspired by Judge Dredd? If not, how did you come up with the idea? Well, Carl Potts approached me. They were going to do a new heavy hitters line at Epic, where they were going to have like a kind of shared universe group of new titles under this new imprint, Heavy Hitters. Because Epic was kind of like, there was this book and that book and that book, but there was no feel to the Epic line. And he basically wanted to create an Epic line of comics. So I'm like, fantastic. Let's do that. And I wanted to work with Flint on something. Flint was coming off of his run on Grimjack at first. And I really wanted to work with Flint on, just about anything. This is Flint imagining he and I in a John Woo movie, by the way. But, and to take advantage of that, basically it was like two guys messing around in comics. It was, it was almost like a throwback, if we had been kids together, the stuff we would have imagined for ourselves in the backyard. So I came up with Law Dog, and the premise for Law Dog is he's a interdimensional lawman. He works for this mysterious group, and he travels between one parallel universe and the other, trying to fix problems so that they can hold the continuity of all existence together, because it's constantly under threat by bad actors and horrific events and all the rest of it. And we did 10 issues and a couple of side jobs. Law Dog met Jugger Grimrod in one special. And just had a blast. It's exploring all these different genres. And that was the idea with Flint. Let's do every genre under the sun. We want to do a story where Nazis conquered America. We want to do a superhero parody. We want to do a zombie story. We want to do, a satanic cult story. We can do it because Law Dog can go anywhere, any kind of crazy thing we could come up with. And we, just had fun working on it. And, we're going to be doing more stuff. Not Flint, but myself. We're going to be doing more stuff with Law Dog through Spin Rack. This is a Sergio Cariello turnaround model sheet for potential animation and such. But it was a great character. And over the course, I'm not a writer who writes to theme, but over time, a theme sort of emerged out of Law Dog, which is that, the universe is fine by itself. There's not a whole lot the human race can do to change the events. We're better off just sort of letting things happen the way they're going to happen. And I think in the end, I saw it as analogous to the efforts to combat global warming. It's pointless, because next week, Mount Pinatubo could blow up and change the whole Earth's temperature anyway. So what can we really do about it by driving around in electric cars? I think I saw it as a story emblematic of man's hubris, man's elevated place that he's put himself in the world, which is even more true today than when I did Law Dog, where this feeling of self-importance, where we're going to come up with all the answers to questions we haven't even asked yet. And, Law Dog was kind of the unwitting pawn of a bunch of scientists who thought that they had all the answers, when, of course, they didn't even know what the question was. So there you go. But, on the surface, it's a big shoot 'em up, crazy parody comic. Todd Cunningham. In Dark Knight Returns, Oliver Queen is missing an arm and has a lot of resentment for Superman. In your Green Arrow run, Oliver had his hand on a bomb, and Superman could have saved him by amputating his arm with heat vision. Ollie chose to blow up with the bomb instead. When writing this, did you imagine this to be the moment where the future of DKR diverges, and in another timeline, this would be the reason why Ollie is missing an arm and has a grudge against Superman? Yeah, you may have solved the mystery for me. Yeah, I guess that's why they wanted Superman in that story. But at the time, Green Arrow was kind of in the bad offices. He was kind of under the banner of the Batman group, and they were intent that Ollie lose the wrong arm. So if you look at the issue versus the art in Dark Knight, you'll see that Ollie has his right arm in the bomb trap, whereas Frank Miller portrays him as missing his left arm. For whatever reason, and I agree with it, because I didn't want Dark Knight Returns to be canon. I didn't like that idea, just same as I didn't like Killing Joke being canon personally. So we switched arms, and and then in the end they decided, well, we're just going to kill him. I wrote this trap, this crazy trap that Superman could not save Ollie from, and wrote the scene where he sears off his arm using his heat vision, and carries Ollie away. And Paul Levitz, apparently, when they presented it to him, said, just kill him, just kill Ollie, and we'll bring him back at a later date. So for whatever reason, for whatever internal office politics or conceptual differences, that decision was made by the big boss man, Paul himself. Nick, again, how do we know about your love of the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns? How about the Dirty Harry series? How do you feel about the series as a whole? Do you have a favorite? I've discussed this in recent videos, but I'll do it again. I'm a big Dirty Harry fan. What can I say? I'm really only a fan of the first movie. I'll watch the others, except Deadpool. It's an awful movie. But I really like the first one. I watch that at least once a year. It's just a perfect, as I referenced earlier, perfect cat and mouse cop thriller, where the cop is up against a worthy opponent who puts him through the ringer. There's very few of these made that are the equal of Dirty Harry, and I don't think any that are better. And I recently, on a What You're Reading segment, did a review of some of the Dirty Harry paperbacks, because I was able to pick up a bunch of these at a decent price, and I've always been curious about them. And they're all the ones I've read like 2 or 3 of them by now. They're better than any of the sequels. They hew closer to the character in my mind. And I've always had that question of, Clint Eastwood played cops in later films, and I always wondered, why weren't they all Dirty Harry films? I mean, Tightrope would have been a great follow-up to Dirty Harry. Just instead of setting in Louisiana, set it in San Francisco and have him play Dirty Harry again. The Rookie as well, The Gauntlet. I mean, why weren't they Dirty Harry movies? Wouldn't they have made, another $50 million at the box office if they were Dirty Harry follow-ups? I guess Clint had a resistance to sort of falling into sort of the James Bond trap of coming out with an entry to a franchise every couple of years. But I don't know. I mean, if I was a decision maker at Warner's, I would have pressed hard to, we do a little tiny slight rewrite on any of these, and these would be great Dirty Harry movies. I mean, certainly better than, Deadpool or The Enforcer, or some of the, wretched sequels they did in the franchise. But, and yeah, I'm a Dirty Harry fan, so much so that I proposed a Dirty Harry Batman crossover back in the 90s when I was on the title, because I love crossovers and I love both characters, obviously. And DC and Warner's were very, very excited about this. The only guy who wasn't excited about it was Clint, and he had final say. He did not want his likeness used in a comic book. He doesn't like his likeness used generally on any kind of merchandising or on any of the rest of it. And so the project got nixed, so we never got to see Dirty Harry in Gotham, which would have been a whole lot of fun. Just the meeting between Harry and Harvey Bullock, and of course they would have an immediate dislike for each other. I mean, I was really looking forward to that, but it's not to be. Michael Gambatti. Ever since Dark Knight and Grant Morrison's Batman 663, Joker has been this dark, edgy representation of how society is messed up. Where's the acid flowers, laughing gas, Joker fish, razor edge playing cards, 10,000 volt joy buzzers? When I saw Joker 2019, I nearly cried. That's not the Joker. That's the pathetic loser on the subway who puts clown makeup on. Do you think Joker will ever return to being the version we saw in '89? Laughing Fish, Batman 321, Dreadful Birthday, Dear Joker? Or do you think it's over and just savor the memories of the classic Joker? Yeah, I hate to tell you, but I mean, it's over, because when you go dark, there's no bottom. And so they've gone dark with the character. When I wrote Joker, and Joker's a character I really don't like. I liked writing him, and it was interesting to write, but I don't like him. I like seeing him foiled. He's a villain I actively dislike. Because what's there to like? He's a psychotic brutalizer. He's, no empathy for human life. He's a monster. But the thing is, you can present that without, going nuts, without making him into, a serial killer type or whatever. And what I really wanted to do when I wrote Joker was to make sure that he actually was funny, that you did laugh at his jokes. I think that's one of the things that the animated series, the first animated series, got so right. The Joker's very funny on those. His delivery, his sarcasm. They give him funny lines, but even the way they're delivered by Mark Hamill make them even funnier, and concentrating on comic timing and things like that. And that was really important to me, that the Joker actually be funny, instead of just, as he had been written in the past, he's telling jokes, but they're not funny and nobody's laughing. I mean, we recognize that they're jokes, but they're not funny jokes. They're dad jokes. And that's, so that was the challenge for me. And yeah, he's psychotic, and he's not averse to killing people. But do you really want to go to, the Joker, bathed in blood, the sort of almost satanic figure that they've turned him into? And like I said, when you start going dark, there's no end to it. As one writer like Alan Moore goes dark as he can on Joker, and then the next writer feels, well, I can go darker than that. And you just go down and down and down this well until you reach the point where you're searching for ways to offend, and it's more about making the character dark than making the character interesting. Dark is probably the worst thing that ever happened to comics. I know, I'm sure you know this, but the Joker movie was originally proposed not as a Joker movie. This is about a loser. And it wasn't until the writers said, well, what if we made it a Joker movie? What if we made this a Joker origin film? And that's when Warner's greenlit it. So yeah. And the thing is, I saw the Joker movie and I wasn't particularly impressed, because it seemed to borrow from so many other movies. That I really didn't see anything brand new there. And once again, it's misery porn. Just how far down can we, crush this guy till he reacts? And the way he reacts I didn't really buy it. It wasn't particularly interesting or shocking or anything else. Joaquin Phoenix is terrific, though, because he always is, and he carries the movie on his back. He's the only thing really interesting about the movie. The Nino. So as a prospective writer myself, I have little training, some scripts, and a fresh laptop. Who should I show my work to? Should I show my work? Contact publishers or go the indie route? Also, can't wait to see your take on Mr. John J. Rambo. Man, I feel sorry for writers trying to break in today. I really do. I feel sorry for myself, except, I knew the window couldn't last forever. I've got work, I've got paying work, and I still reach an audience through crowdfunding and through my novels and everything else. But, nothing like I did in the early 90s. And probably won't again. But that's okay, because I just like sitting here making stuff up. And as long as I'm paid enough to justify my living to my family, then I'm okay with it all. But to break in today, it's depressing. It's serious. I don't want to bring everybody down, but I read recently a Wall Street Journal article that said that there are 3,800 new books published every day. You get your head around that? 3,800 new books are published every day. Now, almost all of them are ebooks, and almost all of them are self-published, but they're still out there. And the point of the article I read was that with AI, that number is going to go up tenfold, 100-fold, because now any idiot can write a book because they don't actually write it. They just tell AI what they want, and AI writes, some tedious, mediocre string of words, that they can either rewrite or just instantly publish themselves with their name on it. So to say that the field is crowded is an understatement. It's full to the top. It's slopping over with books. Now, how do you get noticed in that environment? I don't really have any answer for you, because you can say, well, I could write the greatest story ever written. Yeah, you could. And it's been done. And a lot of times it just never gets seen. It never gets read. Nobody looks at it. Nobody publishes it. It's tough. It's a tough world out there. Conversely, it's never been easier to publish a book, obviously, but that's the problem, isn't it? It's never been easier, so everybody's doing it. I don't have any real cogent, and to go to a publisher, publishers won't even look at you without a literary agent. I've never had a literary agent. I can't get a literary agent. Literary agents are busy with their clients, and they're not taking on anybody else, and they're certainly not taking on some, comic book guy. I don't know what it takes to get a literary agent. I fear what you would have to do to get a literary, totally compromise yourself. I don't know what to tell you. Hang around outside James Patterson's house or something. Boy, what's that guy going to do with AI? I hate to bring people down. It doesn't give me any pleasure, but it's a tough gig. But don't stop writing. Write. Who knows? If you got a burning desire to tell a story, you got a burning desire to tell a story. And you mentioned like a level of education. There's no level of education for writing. You're right. I don't have any degrees. Not even close. So, just go for it. And hey, you mentioned Rambo. Rambo First Kill graphic novel is still available in demand. It's going to be out soon, and the campaign will end, but you can still get it. I'll provide the link here below. And it's doing real well, and we want to do more. We have an idea for a second one. Crazy story but this is the story of John Rambo's first tour in Vietnam. It's basically the origin story for Rambo with the blessings and approval of Mr. Sylvester Stallone himself. Hey, if you want to get in contact with me, where the heck did that get to? If you want to get in contact with me, there we go. brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com is the most reliable way to get a hold of me. And I do have a new Conan novel out. It is, should have had a picture here. It's called Caravan of the Damned. I don't know why the picture isn't showing up. It's out from Arkhaven, and I think you would enjoy it. Let's see, hold on here. No, I got no artwork for that. Where'd my artwork go? Who stole my artwork? Anyway, that's it for me this week. I will see you down the road. But thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching and listening and all the rest of it. And take care of yourself.